Nigeria, how much longer will we stay silent? How much longer will we watch as women's bodies are violated, their voices silenced, and their pain dismissed? Another day, another allegation. And this time it is Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, a woman in power, a lawmaker, standing before the world to say, I was sexually harassed. And how does Nigeria react? As usual, mockery, gaslighting, and character assassination. The very system that should protect victims questions their credibility instead. And let's not pretend this is an isolated case, because the truth is, this is Nigeria's culture of silence, which I talk about often, and impunity in full display. So let's go down memory lane the way I like to do it. Remember the BBC Sex for Grades investigation, exposing how professors and lecturers in our universities pry on young girls, demanding their dignity in exchange for marks. Some of those professors still walk free today, in campuses for that matter. We remember the case of Baba Ijesha, the Nollywood actor caught on tape assaulting a minor, yet people still defended him. They said maybe she was lying. They also said maybe she wanted it. A child wanted it. We remember the horror of Ochanya Ogbanye, the 13-year-old girl who was sexually abused by a father and his son until her tiny body could not take no more. Ochanya did not survive. But did Nigeria learn? Did our justice system rise to defend her? Your guess is as good as mine. Let's not forget Busola Dakolo. Yes, the wife of musician Timi Dakolo, who stood against a powerful pastor alleging that she was raped at just 16 years old. What did she get in return? Threats, attacks, dismissal. So when Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan stands up to say, I was sexually harassed, do not be shocked at the backlash she faces. Because this is what Nigeria happens. This is what happens in Nigeria when a woman dares to speak up. The problem is not that the woman, it's not always with the woman. The problem is that the society refuses to believe her, to believe them, to believe us. The problem is not that there are no laws. The problem is not about the people in power. The problem is how the people in power bend those laws to protect the predators instead of the victims. Women are harassed in government offices. They are harassed in universities. They are harassed in the streets as they walk about their daily lives. They are harassed in the gyms as they go about their duties, just exercising. They are harassed when they go to run and exercise every morning. They are harassed in their own homes and also in the workplace. And yet the question is, and it always has been, what was she wearing? Why was she there? Why did she wait so long to speak? Enough. We should demand better. We should demand a country where women do not have to choose between their careers and their dignity. We demand institutions where men in power do not think a woman's body is their entitlement. We demand a legal system that protects survivors and punishes abusers. No matter how rich, how famous, or how connected they are, we demand safe spaces for our girls, like the late Ochanya Ogbanye, like those girls that we saw in that now famous Sex for Grade documentary. For every girl in every classroom and theater hall or lecture halls in universities today. For every woman who's trying to break every glass ceiling to get to the top. And to the men, the enablers, the bystanders, who watch and say nothing. Instead, they are shocked, they're confused. How? Hey, this is no place for governance. They should not be talking about this matter in the public, in the media. Your silence is also complicit. You are complicit. Nigeria, enough is enough. Let's stop being silent. Let's start demanding justice. And we will not be a country where sexual harassment is just another headline, another story that fades away. And hopefully our job today is to make sure that those stories that matter to you do not fade away here on Breakfast Extra. My name is Judith TV. Of course, my co-host, incomparable Mazino Appeal, joins me. Mazino, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Judith, and quite a sensitive topic today, and I do agree with you, especially with everything that's happening with the Natasha. But I've got so much to say, maybe when you get here.
Absolutely. Well, and also our heart goes out to all of the victims. This is a triggering time for those who have ever experienced sexual assault, sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. This is very triggering, seeing the headlines and seeing the reactions to it following these allegations. Our heart goes out to you. But hey, good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. Let's get started. And you're welcome. Let's get started for today, and we'll kick things off with our big report. The leadership crisis within the Lagos State House of Assembly has taken a new turn, deepening the already tense political landscape in the state. The turmoil began when Speaker Mudashiru Obasa was removed from office by a majority of lawmakers and allegations of financial mismanagement and abuse of power. In response, Mojisola Meranda was elected as the new speaker in what was seen as a decisive move to restore order and credibility to the assembly. However, in a dramatic twist, Obasa made a controversial return to the assembly complex on February 27th, flanked by security operatives and a group of supporters. He proceeded to preside over a plenary session with only a handful of lawmakers in attendance, challenging the legitimacy of his removal. This bold action has further escalated tensions, with many lawmakers rejecting his return and questioning the legality of his actions. The unfolding crisis has serious implications not just for the Assembly, but for governance in Lagos State as a whole. With a divided legislature and growing uncertainty over leadership, critical legislative functions have stalled, leaving citizens concerned about the impact on governance and service delivery. And so to better understand the implications of this crisis, we will speak with key voices from political and analytic landscape, including our lead reporter, Bernard Akeda, who has been following the story closely, and we also have a key figure, political figure from Obasa's camp. But first, here is his report from earlier this week.
The entrance of the Lagos State House of Assembly looks like a carnival as supporters of the ousted Speaker, Mudashiru Obasa, celebrate his return. Speaking with News Central's correspondent, Obasa's supporters say he was unlawfully removed and should be reinstated.
What's happening here today is not a big deal. It's what we call political moral support. You will know that it's been like 2 months now. The Speaker was removed on the 13th of January, and since that time, he has not set his foot on this place. So this is the first time he's coming here. So we got wind of it, and we came here to support him.
I love what is going on here today. We are outside here. We don't know what is going on in there, but I can hear outside that Obasa will be sitting back as a Lagos State Speaker of Lagos Assembly. So I love that.
This unexpected move has plunged the Assembly into confusion, especially following the reported withdrawal of security details assigned to the current Speaker, Mojisola Meranda. The situation remains tense as both Obasa and Meranda claim the speakership. As at the time of filing this report, the Assembly is yet to release an official statement regarding the unfolding of events.
We won't take laws into our hands, just like I told the staffs that they should not take laws into their hands. But we all belong to different constituencies, and we have our mandate. And whatever has to happen, the leadership should speak with us, and not this charade that we are seeing. We are not against the leadership's decision, but they should call us and tell us to our face, and not us hearing rumors. We are not against leadership decisions. It is the leadership. They took us here. They are our leaders, and we still stand. They nominated us, and we still stand with their decisions. But not to do it this way. We are embarrassed. So thank you gentlemen. And
We hereby reject Obasa.
We reject Obasa.
As you rightly said, I'm here. So as I'm here, it simply means the house is on.
Well, sir, on social media, we have it information flowing that you barged into this premises.
Confirm it now. If you had, you should.
We were trying to confirm from you. Can you tell us exactly?
So what are you implying? Are you saying that I broke it or I broke the door to get access? Is that what you are saying?
I don't know.
So I go and confirm now. If you have had, then confirm from your source. He will do what? Yeah. Allege. Will do what? Will prove.
So have you been reinstated? Are you back now?
I've told you repeatedly, I've never been removed. There's nothing like impeachment. So I don't know what you are saying. I've said this openly.
Sir.
That everybody, remove, what is it called? Impeachment or whatever, or removing is all democratic and constitutional. But in doing that, to achieve that, you must follow the due process.
Observers anticipate that the coming days will be crucial in determining the leadership and direction of the Lagos State House of Assembly. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Bettina Nwili.
Well, many thanks to Bettina Nwili for that report. Now, following this incident, there have been reports suggesting a potential suspension of the senator, which she has publicly addressed. Now, additionally, comments from the Senate spokesperson emphasized that the National Assembly is not a platform for what was termed as content creation. Now, let's get back to the subject here as we introduce our guests. We have our lead reporter, Bernard Akedi, who is, joining us via video call. And of course, here inside of the studio, we have Niniola Adegoke, the Special Advisor on Youth Affairs and Special Duties to Mudashiru Obasa. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Bernard, I'm going to come to you first. If you please walk us through the events that led to the latest escalation in the Lagos Assembly crisis, please.
All right, thank you for having me, Judith and Mazino. Now, as you know, on that fateful Thursday, we got wind of the fact that there was some drama around the premises of the Lagos House of Assembly, and duly and promptly we arrived there, only to meet, as I mentioned in that report, what seemed like a carnival. You know, we had supporters of Senator Mudashiru Obasa, dancing, jubilating, celebrating right in front of the House of Assembly the fact that he had returned to take charge of, like they mentioned, what they felt was duly his. While I was outside there, our correspondent Bettina Nwili was inside, and yes, Mudashiru Obasa was in there with a handful of his supporters. Now, I cannot exactly say that that he presided over any sitting. Because, I mean, first of all, who was he presiding over? Like you did mention, just a handful of lawmakers were there. So we can't exactly call it, presiding over a sitting. There were other lawmakers who were within the complex. However, they were not inside. They just kept going around, as you see, or as you saw in that video, in that clip. And then towards the end, they kept saying, we reject Obasa as the speaker. So basically, it was a case of there was some activity going on inside while there was celebration going on outside. Obasa did claim, after he had been questioned by journalists who were there, that he was never impeached. He was never removed. So according to him and his supporters and his faithful, he is still the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Representatives. Also, based on that report and what you also did say, Mojisola Meranda as well has not come forward to say that she is stepping down, at least not to the best of my knowledge, and there's been no document to also state that as well. And she has not stated that she's stepping down or that she had been removed or impeached or that she had willingly decided to step aside as the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Representatives. So what this means is, officially, we still have Meranda as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, but Obasa has also returned to claim that he is the Speaker. So officially we have one speaker, unofficially we have two. I think what we have to do now is to wait and see at the next sitting who exactly will occupy the seat. It's almost like the Game of Thrones now. Who would occupy the seat of the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Representatives? We're here for it.
Well, Bernard, we would also like to know exactly what the supporters of Mojisola Meranda are saying. If you could please give us any idea, because it's been very, we've tried in our capacity to reach out to them, but perhaps maybe there's still some skepticism regarding showing up on media. So what did you notice regarding the supporters for for Mojisola Meranda?
Yeah, so inside the premises of the Lagos State House of Lagos State House, basically, the supporters of Senator Mojisola Meranda, first of all, vehemently claimed, or rather, stated that they are not in support of Obasa. That the person that they claimed basically that clearly Mojisola Meranda had been put, well, I wouldn't even call it a claim because it was all over the media and everybody saw it. She presided at certain points that she is the rightful Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly and that she is the one that they know. So it looks like they are still solidly behind her. They still have their weight behind her. Remember the last time, the last report that we had on News Central, before this one that you saw that was on Thursday, there were about 36 members of the House who said they threw their weight solidly behind Meranda and that she is the speaker that they know, the speaker that they support. Remember that in that particular clip, she actually broke down in tears, feeling overwhelmed by the support that she got from these representatives, these lawmakers. So, like you also clearly did state, not many of them have come forward to speak to the press since after Thursday's drama, so to speak. But going by with the last information we have, they are still in support of her. So again, basically we're waiting to see what happens at the next sitting, whenever that would be. What will happen to the House, first of all? Will the House be divided as it seems it is right now? And then secondly, who exactly is going to occupy that seat? Will it be Mojisola Meranda or will it be Mudashiru Obasa?
Now, Bernard, this is not a question, but wanted to note that in the dailies from after Thursday, there were rumors that Meranda had willingly resigned. I wanted to put that out there before we go into asking questions here with Mr. Niniola in the studio.
Now, Mr. Niniola, I have to ask, right, we know that the case is in court. We know that Obasa had gone to court filing that his removal was illegal. Why not wait for the court proceeding to pass a judgment before going in to have a plenary session with select lawmakers?
All right. Let me start from this way. If you remember vividly, this thing started January 13th. And I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe there is a time frame for such, you understand me? And whenever we have a crisis in our party, we have different form of mechanism to resolve the conflict. But because of the time factor and the way they are dragging the issue, so we need to consider the option of court. Now the case is in court. That's number one. Number two, I want you to realize that all of them, they are a product of a system. And that system that produces them is a political party known as APC, All Progressives Congress. Now, in politics, political intervention is far, far ahead of legal solution. Now, you see all those lawmakers, all of them came from different constituencies. And as the things stand now, you and I know that even January 13th, their plan was to remove Mr. Speaker, and they failed to achieve it. Simply means that Mr. Speaker is still intact as the Speaker. Obasa has never been removed for once. Not to talk of probably reinstatement.
So why didn't go to court?
Hold on. Not to talk of restatement at all. That's number two. Number three is this. February 27th, that was last week, this week, Thursday, Obasa resumed officially. If you remember, I was here and I said it. I cannot recollect the date vividly. But I said we are going to, the plenary will resume February 18th officially, before they went on recess. That was the unanimous date that, okay, we are coming back on the 18th. Do you understand me? And these people invited DSS on the 17th, thinking that Right Honorable Mudashiru Obasa is coming there, probably to cause chaos or trouble or any form of money.
Who invited the DSS?
The aggrieved lawmakers. Again, they turned around and said, it is DSS invasion.
Because I was going there because we heard that it was an invasion by the DSS.
And I was also here also
and that the office of the Speaker was broken into. So if you're saying that they invited the DSS and they're saying, so who invited the DSS?
Meranda leadership invited DSS.
So the office was broken into?
Yeah.
How do you invite somebody when your office is going to be broken into?
Whose office?
The Speaker's office was broken into.
Let's ask Meranda how exactly. Let's ask her what means, of what modality, or what channel does it pass through before she gains access to that office. That's Speaker's office. She broke into it.
Her office?
Yes.
Her office?
Yes, there is a particular, whose office?
Well, at the time. At the time, it's assumed that it's her office.
That is not our
Whoever
office.
is the Speaker of the House is the office. If the members of the Assembly have put a vote of confidence on her and chanted on your mandate you shall stand and referred to her as Speaker Meranda, automatically that means she's the occupant of that office. Obasa is not the occupant. Whoever is a Speaker of the House of Assembly automatically becomes the owner of that office.
Let me clarify that aspect. You are not a politician. You're a journalist. But let me tell you what is going on. She's a deputy speaker. She's also entitled to vote of confidence if they think she deserves it. Now, this vote of confidence is based on a particular thing. And what is that? Is their belly. Okay, we have collected so. We must do our job. Now, if you look at the trend, initially they started with corruption, abuse of office, incitement, different kind of allegation. Suddenly they changed those allegations. Nothing like corruption anymore. Do you understand me? Since Mr. Speaker returned to the country. After that, they said, okay, they are scared of him because he's going to, probably he's going to hurt them and this and that. And Mr. Speaker has told them repeatedly that there is nothing of such. I still have some pictures on my phone. November 11th, we had novelty march. We hang out, we do this, we relate very, very well. Even Speaker's aid against lawmakers. We play football, we wind together. Now, that's no, I'm just telling you the kind of people we are dealing with. Now, let's not look at the legitimacy of that office. I can boldly tell you that Meranda, she's the deputy speaker, and the reason is this. All the instruments that she needs to get to that position majority were not available.
Specifically,
even the legitimate clerk of the house. I'm coming. Legitimate clerk of the house was under indefinite suspension, Barrister Onofeko. And if you follow it very, very well, recently Industrial Court reinstated him, stating that all what they did on that very day is equal to null and void.
I may not be a politician, but I am a journalist, and being a journalist, it means that I have to state the facts.
Okay.
And since we're talking about legitimacy of whoever is supposed to be Speaker of the Lagos House of Assembly, this case is in court. Obasa put out a case. Why then go through this route of having what has now been described severally as a carnival, and you presiding over a plenary session with select lawmakers instead of waiting for the courts to then pass a judgment on what exactly is the legitimacy, who exactly is legal, who's the legal speaker? Why have you not answered that question?
I'm coming to that end.
Okay, get to the end.
I'm coming to that end. On February 27th, Mr. Speaker resumed officially. And though he's supposed to resume before that date, but because the DSS sued Speaker's office, Deputy Speaker, and the Clerk office. But before that 27th, that was 26th February, the restated clerk resumed officially, but he was denied an access to his office. That is another case entirely. That is the contempt of court. Because court restated him. Logically, you should know that something will stand on something. If the industrial court said that the suspension of the Barrister Onofeko cannot stand, automatically Mr. Speaker is still holding ground. look at the sequence of the event, though. Then Mr. Speaker comes in. But before Mr. Speaker got to that office that very day, he was able to get security clearance, that everything is in good position, because those courts already copied the DSS and the police force. They gave him security clearance. And when he got to that parliament, you know what happened? He went through thorough security screening before he was permitted to move in. Likewise, other lawmakers. So nobody is threatening anybody. Now, on the aspect of the plenary, yes, there was a plenary on that very day, and it was a legitimate one. Fine, we have scanty number of people on the seat, but some people went on official assignment, and Mr. Speaker sanctioned it before they went. He approved it. He said, okay, you can go ahead, because we don't really have much to discuss, but I'm only here to correct some flaws outside. That was why it was there. If you look at the proceeding, they don't spend much time because of what is going on.
So, Mr. Niola, just a second. You have actually gotten to where I need you to get to. Now, what were the processes that happened on the 27th when Obasa, the processes that happened on the 27th when Obasa came, and I use that lightly, to the Lagos State House of Assembly with security agents? Now, what happened? What decisions were made? Who sat as Speaker when these decisions were made? Because journalists were not allowed in, so we don't have an idea. You were there, I assume. Yes. Please give us a detailed account
Speaker,
of what happened as he came in through the gates.
Obasa sat down as the Speaker.
Okay. And who was present? How many people were present?
We have reasonable number of people
in the
parliament. I say reasonable.
Humbly, I ask, how many specifically?
When I say reasonable, it's something that you can calculate by yourself. Look at the number of those people on the video. Just look at it in that way, plus those one inside, then plus those one on official trip. You will definitely know that, okay, things are now gradually getting back. Let me tell you something about...
So are you saying all the people in this video are lawmakers? Every single person here is a lawmaker?
Majority of them.
Majority. So we can't then. We're not sure if it's majority. We can't.
I'm telling you because I know them very well.
The number is very important. How many sat?
Because of the situation, there are some certain information that I'm not going to reveal to you. But I can boldly tell you that Mr. Speaker committed no wrongs on that very day. And apart from that, ma'am, you see those lawmakers outside there, if truly there is crisis, they won't be in that premises.
My name is Imam. My name is Judah.
Oh, no. Sorry for that.
No, it's okay. But
do you understand me?
I do. But if the majority of the lawmakers recognize Speaker Meranda, and they still recognize Meranda Mojisola as the Speaker, how does Obasa plan to regain full control of the Assembly and regain the trust of the Assembly without the court ruling?
Good. Obasa has never lost their trust. Hold on, I'm coming. This game has been on since 5 years ago. Do you understand me? Obasa has never lost anybody's confidence. But the only thing they succeeded, I told you last time, was to disturb the stability of that house and harmony. If you look at the Lagos State House of Assembly before this incident, I can boldly boast my chest that this house is the template for other state assemblies.
Just a second, sir. I apologize. We still have Bernard who's on. Bernard, I'm wondering if you're curious regarding any of the statements Mr. Niola has made, because you were there as well. Are you curious? Is there any clarification you would like to make regarding anything or any instances that he's mentioned? Bernard, please.
Well, I think you already brought to the fore one of the questions I would have loved to ask, and that was, asking how many lawmakers were present at that sitting, and then what decisions were made, what was the conversation about, because that basically was a bone of contention, if you ask me. While some said that there was no sitting, that Right Honorable if you can still call him that, Right Honorable Mudashiru Obasa, was indeed in the premises, and he sat there. Some say he came to register his presence, while others have it that he actually came there and presided. So again, what is the procedure for the speaker to have, for there to be a sitting? How many lawmakers should be present? And then what were the things that were discussed? That's one. Now, secondly, I think there's something that would have seemed too much of a coincidence as about the time on that Thursday. Now, not long after we left the premises of the Lagos State House of Assembly, not long after that did we receive a message from the Lagos State Police Command, and then there was a press briefing. Now, I'd like you to please listen and put this in perspective and put it together. Now, at that press briefing, if you remember, first of all, Senator Mojisola Meranda's security detail was withdrawn from her just a few days before then. And then Obasa had his security detail, had security detail given to him. Now, at the press briefing, the question was, why did this happen? And then the commissioner of police, the new commissioner of police, that's, I'll get his name back anyway, the new commissioner of police stated that the Lagos State Police Command around this time was conducting, an audit of police officers attached to persons and groups. This audit, I beg your pardon, contains auditing of the officers, auditing of their uniforms, their weapons, their gear, their gadgets, and everything. Also, they were auditing to see if some of these police details actually were properly registered to be with certain persons at that time. If they were found not properly documented and registered, they would be recalled. And so, according to him, the reason why Mojisola Meranda's security detail was recalled as at that time was because they had to undergo that audit. And after the auditing, that they have been returned to her. Now, as for Mudashiru Obasa, that he claimed that there were threats to his life and his family, and that any well-meaning Nigerian, if you have such claims and it is found to be true, then you could be given police detail and security, which means you and I could actually get police detail and security. But the only question that journalists had as at then is, doesn't it seem too convenient, to come up with this reason around this time? It's too much of a coincidence, basically. Now, this is not a question I'm pushing out. It's just some of the observations, like you stated. I think the only big question is the one you have asked and probably has been answered by the guest, and that is, what exactly were the proceedings that went on that day, and who exactly were the lawmakers that were present?
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Agdegoke Niniola, who is the special assistant there to Mr. Speaker Obasa, Right Honorable Mudashiru Obasa, you said that not all of the lawmakers support him, but we have a visual I'm about to play. It's a video of Speaker Mojisola Meranda and other members of the House of Assembly who were chanting support to her and just pretty much showing their solidarity standing beside her. Take a look.
Into our hand, just like I told the staffs that they should not take laws into their hands. But we all belong to different constituencies, and we have a mandate. And whatever has to happen, the leadership should speak with us, and not this charade that we are seeing. We are not against the leadership's decision, but they should call us and tell us to our face, and not us hearing rumors. We are not against leadership decisions. It is the leadership. They took us here. They are our leaders, and we still stand. They nominated us, and we still stand with their decisions. But not to do it this way. We were embarrassed. So thank you, gentlemen. And
we hereby reject Obasa. We reject Obasa. As you rightly said, I'm here. So as I'm here, it's...
And where you see there is them chanting, we reject Obasa, saying that they would not accept it and they have chosen who they want, showing solidarity to Speaker Mojisola Meranda there. Those are lawmakers from the Lagos State House of Assembly. With that visual, are you still saying that the majority of the House are casting vote of confidence?
With that visual, not all of them are lawmakers. I can identify all of them. Do you understand?
Same as in the previous one, where we can identify some people who are not lawmakers as well, which you noted yourself.
Now you are balancing it. Now. Okay. Do you understand?
Balance is all we want.
Take that first. I'm taking you somewhere.
Okay.
You see their spokesman he said something. He said, they are not against the leadership decision, but they are waiting for them to call them and tell them to their face. Let me be honest with you. I cannot speak for the House, the next dispensation, but this present administration, till today, Obasa is the Speaker. No two way about it. Don't let us start speaking grammar. Don't let us drag it. They themselves knows that. When the crisis started, their figure
Mr. Dikoke,
was more than this.
Mr. Dikoke, just a second now. I would like to, we would like to also put out an invitation to the Mojisola Meranda camp, and maybe perhaps the supporters, the lawmakers that are supporting her, because we have tried in the past to actually try and get them here. It's not a time to keep quiet as these processes or these instances continue to happen and unfold. We think that we believe that it is best that they come out to tell exactly how they feel so that the world knows where they stand regarding this issue. So here is an official, let's put it that way, invitation for them to please do come in and let's have these conversations here on News Central. Judith?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Dikoke, thank you so much for taking out the time to join us today. Mr. Dikoke Niniola, he is the special assistant and advisor.
Though I have something to say, but you didn't allow me to say.
Please go ahead.
Real quick, sir.
Very quickly, because out of time.
From what the spokesman said last, it has been established that Obasa is the Speaker. Do you understand me now? Whatever they are not okay with, let them come forward and express themselves. We are all human. We can have issue today. Once we are able to relate together, we'll be able to move from that spot and move ahead. Lagos State we want all of them, but we don't need all of them.
The APC in Lagos has always been a united front. If the chieftain of APC asks both Meranda and Obasa to step down and ask somebody else to take mantle,
that's not possible. That's not possible. Forget about that.
It won't be possible.
It is not possible. It's not possible.
Right.
It's not even on the table. All those options, they are street options. You know,
Mr. Niniola Adegoke, let's say thank you very much for coming on Breakfast Extra yet again, and I'm sure that we will be seeing you afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And also to our very own, News Central's very own, superstar, Bernard Akere.
I almost forgot Bernard is still on. Bernard, sorry. You work here, so.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you for doing this with us, and good morning to you. See you later on in the week.
Welcome back, and it's time for a big story. Now, President Bola Tinubu has announced plans to review the regulatory framework governing Nigeria's telecommunications sector to align with global best practices. Now, this initiative aims to enhance infrastructure protection, improve operational efficiency, and create a more investment-friendly environment, with telecommunications playing a pivotal role in our daily lives, from business operations to personal communications. These reforms could have significant implications for customers and consumers and service providers alike.
And so to help us break down this, we're joined by Uti Ulu. She is a customer experience expert, and she joins us live now to just give us a bit of insight into this move by the president. Uti, as always, it's sublime having you join us and seeing your bright face this morning. Good morning to you.
That was my line. That was my line, but it's okay, Judith.
Let's get started, shall we? President Tinubu has emphasized the need to overhaul the telecom sector's regulatory framework to reflect global best practices, right? So from a customer experience perspective, how do you think this review could impact the quality of services provided to Nigerian consumers? Because I got a list, but I'll let you start.
I think, first, it's a good move. Any move that focuses on improving the experience for the consumers absolutely is a win in my book. So every time I hear that customer experience is getting, front and center, it's very exciting for me. So what do we expect, or what do I expect to see as a result of this? I mean, first and foremost is always having, I'm glad that they're starting from a framework, right? So you need to have the right plan in place. So it's one thing, I mean, if you talk about it sometimes from a Nigerian perspective, we're very good at building frameworks. We're very good at policies. Implementation then becomes the actual problem. But first and foremost, it is great to have a framework. It's great to have something that builds on the existing consumer protection policies that we have. We have several acts that govern consumer protection in Nigeria, and the rights and responsibilities of the consumers are clearly defined. So what we expect to see from this kind of framework is defining for that particular sector, so in this case the telecom sector, defining more in detail what the rights of the consumer are, what the responsibilities of the consumers are, what the responsibilities of the MNOs are, because they're the key players in the sector. They're the key service providers, right? So what do we expect to see from them? Given that he's now put some additional approvals in place, I believe there's an executive order that then protects things like fiber optics and the infrastructure, basically, which really is what supports the service that's delivered in the industry. So that's a good foundation. Then coming into the framework to say, clearly defining and building on. Today we have, I think, about 12 rights of the consumer according to the NCC, but really then drilling down into that. And one of those things is the right to be informed. Nigerians, knowledge is power. So understanding what your rights are, understanding that you have a right to redress, understanding that you have a right to complain, and not just complain, not the one where we just sort of sit around with our friends and complain and say this person is not delivering great service, or we just accept it, but realizing most importantly that as a consumer, you have rights, your rights are protected, and you have a voice, and you have one key right, which is to seek redress when you're not happy.
So, Uti, the president also in a meeting with, I think, Airtel's chairman, Sunil Bhatti Mittal, he expressed the pro-business stance and a commitment to creating better infrastructure for consumers and also customers as well. So how might this increase, or investors actually, not consumers this time, how can creating a good platform for investors translate to great consumer or customer satisfaction?
Well, to be honest, if you look at the set of MNOs that we have in Nigeria, only one of them is an indigenous company, right? So this is an investor-heavy, and will I say foreign investor-heavy sector, right? And for those investors, for the sector as a whole, it's a sector that is largely based on imports. All the infrastructure, majority of what that sector uses, right, is imported. So they are largely very, very heavily dependent on FX. They're dependent on having locally an environment that allows them to be able to do business easily, conveniently, and profitably. Let's remember that these are not NGOs, these are actual businesses. And I like that you brought up Mittal, because, I mean, this is a man and an organization that not only provides telecom services in Nigeria, they provide telecom services, I think, in about 14 countries in Africa, Nigeria included, and also in India, which is their home country. And I think they've also now bought into British Telecom. So they are very experienced when it comes to providing this telecom service. So even when we talk about global best practices, one could argue that this particular brand, Airtel, is one of the drivers of best practice across the world, being that they provide this service in so many different locations. So they're no strangers to best practice. But when it comes to them as investors within the Nigerian space, the Nigerian government has a responsibility, and I believe that's what the minister is trying to do and the president is trying to do now, is to create an environment that really allows these businesses to continue to invest in our country, in the infrastructure in our country, because if they don't do that, the customer experience will suffer, right? We're all used to dialing a number and we hear, oh, the number you're calling is not allocated. You hear, oh, this line is not currently available. There's a whole myriad of messages that Nigerians have become used to when trying to use these services.
Hang on a second,
all
Uti.
down to poor infrastructure.
Uti, can I redirect this questioning now? Can I look at the investor as the customer now? Because we can see that where it affects them, it affects the consumers themselves, which is you and I. We're paying higher for tariffs now because, well, of course, it's more expensive to actually bring us these services.
You also clamored for it.
So what do you think the president could actually do to make it home for these foreign investors here in Africa, here in Nigeria, considering our inflation, considering our hike in the price for petrol or diesel, which these telecom industries actually use to power these stations, where we have these masts and all of that? How can Nigeria make it home for these investors?
So I think that the first place to start there is definitely with the infrastructure. For any business, any retail business, which is what the telcos are, Nigeria is a dream location, right? The amount of people that we have, the spread that we have across the country. So Nigeria would be a pretty important location for any serious MNO. But the reality of it is the government has to put the infrastructure in place. So that's why I said that this executive order is fantastic, because the fact is these companies and the service that they provide, they suffer from a lot of vandalization, degradation of their infrastructure, of the towers, of cable cuts, fiber optic cable cuts. These are the things that affect the service that we as the end consumers receive. So having this protection in place now means that you're going to get a better level of service. The MNOs are going to be able to get restitution when they have these fiber cuts. That essentially means that they're not just carrying the cost single-handedly of getting you back online and getting you back the service that you're paying for. So that is a very, very critical step. The other thing that could be done, now we've just had a tariff hike about a month ago. Now, that tariff hike took years. I believe it was probably somewhere in the region of 10 years of lobbying to get the tariff hike. Again, these are businesses. The environment has to be conducive. The numbers have to be conducive. These businesses and these organizations are putting in hundreds of millions of dollars into our environment for these services, and they deserve a return for their income or for their investment. So the reality of it is,
right, Uti, sorry to cut you there, but when we think about, because when you're talking about, the contributions that they're making, the fact that this is a profit-making, venture, and they do have to make money, there's also gaps in the services that they provide. There's data depletion, which we've talked about, and the media has raised concerns about people who buy 100 gig. Never lasting. You have to renew your data 3 or 4 times on your mobile phone. Not more. What more? Your internet connection at home. There's that. There's also the fact that the services, whether it's call or data, is either slow or it's
non-existent.
It's horrible.
It's still coming back. It's still coming back to the point that I was trying to make.
Well, there are challenges then that pretty much still exist in the telco sector. So what then should be urgent for the regulatory regulatory organizations to pretty much intervene on, instead of this price hike that we have seen?
So this is the perspective that I was trying to put it to the fore, right? So there's first and foremost the fact that you have to realize that it's like they say, it takes money to make money, right? Now, if it's taking you 10 years to get a price review, in that time you've been spending money. In that time there's been currency devaluation. In that time there's been rapid growth in inflation. Now, in 10 years, you will agree that even in your personal income and expenses, you will agree that both sides have increased, right? So in not having allowed the income to increase, right, you have to be able to calibrate these things. It can't take 10 years for a price hike, because guess what? When the price hike happens, right, which is what we're feeling now as Nigerians, it's coming at the worst possible time, and it's coming at a higher rate. So what we've done is, the telcos wanted 100%. We ended up at 50%. 50% is a huge increase for any consumer to have to bear. Ideally, what it should be is that I get 2%, and then maybe I get 5%, it's single-digit increases, or even less than a single-digit increase. And so over time, the consumer has time to adjust. The organization also has an increase in income, which again then leads to an ability to continue to invest more, which then leads to better infrastructure and stable infrastructure and stable service. So if you kind of see, it's like a chicken and egg situation, which comes first, or a vicious cycle. It all feeds into each other. The difference is we've spent this whole period of time sort of limiting their ability to earn money. And when you look at it from the perspective where they say, our revenue has dropped, it's going to take us some time for our revenue to get back to where it was pre-currency devaluation. I'm on the side of the consumer, right? I think that the consumer is priority. Every business needs consumers to survive, and the consumers have to be able to pay for the service and get the service that they've paid for. But the reality is that if the service provider is hamstrung, then it's going to impact the consumer at the end of the day. So do you see why I call it a vicious cycle?
I do see what you're saying. But it would seem that this is coming on the timeline very misplaced, because if they had had this conversation from before the tariff increase, maybe present them with conducive policies for them to make better business, that would not have translated to us, the customers, seeing the price hike. Just a thought.
Right.
I'm wondering.
As we're even talking about...
If you did have a price hike, it certainly wouldn't be 50%. If you even just did a 5% every year, if I just did a simple division, right, and said there was a 5% increase every year over the last 10 years, it would certainly be easier to stomach, and it would be certainly easier on the consumer's pocket than a 50% increase in one go.
And mind you, the highest earning CEO of all of the public sector and private sector, or the business terrain, is pretty much one of the CEOs of one of the telco companies, not naming names, just saying. But again, then it begs to ask the question whether the regulatory commissions who are in charge of the telcos to ensure that the consumers are, the needs are met and they meet standard, have dropped the ball in ensuring that consumers are satisfied.
Well, the responsibility on the regulator now is to make sure that we get value for the 50% increase.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you now have a 50% increase. It's not what you wanted, but this is where the regulator can't go to sleep now, right? So, to whom much is given, much is expected. Now, we may not, by their definition, they may not think they've been given much, but they've been given something. So now we require something in return. For me, the signal that that infrastructure is a critical asset, that classification by the government, signals to me an understanding of the criticality of the sector to our economy. As the service sector is the biggest contributor. So at the end of the day, right, or one of the biggest contributors. So at the end of the day, it makes sense, and it signals that the government is thinking in the right direction. What I hope to see is that thought crystallizes into action. It crystallizes into penalties and protections around fiber optic cables. I mean, we all remember what happened last year when, the undersea cable was cut.
Yes.
It gives you, if you remember that incident, it gives you a clear picture, a visual picture of the criticality of this infrastructure to us as a nation. If you think about the other key sectors that depend on the telcos, banking sector heavily depends on the telcos. So the reality of it is critical. So the government needs to make sure that this executive order that's been signed is not just we're going to sign it and put it aside. It's time for the minister to ensure that this infrastructure is being protected, the required activities in terms of ensuring that, the right agencies, the right bodies, the NCC, are making sure that infrastructure is protected, that the ability for the telcos and the MNOs to put in more investments, to lay more cables. When you're going to lay cables, it's not just the NCC. You probably have the Ministry of Works. There's a whole ecosystem and value chain that goes to delivering this service. How do we make it easier for all of these organizations to do business, to be functional, to be effective? That's where the government comes in. So now it's time to execute. If all of that is done, then you've basically taken away every bit of wiggle room for these companies to say, we have challenges. We need to get value for our 50% increase.
Uti, want to say thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
When one gets you started on anything customer experience, it's hard to get you to stop. But thank you, Uti, for gracing us with your intellectual responses this morning on the matter. Thank you.
I mean, my brain can't get past the cable incident from, was it just 2 years ago? Couldn't get past. Every time I see a wire, I think, this thing is underwater. Impressive. Uti, once again, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We're going to, bring you the news in just a bit, and that will be Judith. Do stay tuned.
And let's get started with breakfast headlines here on Breakfast Extra. And let's begin by telling you that abducted national president of the Afenifere Youth Council, Eniola Ojajuni, has been released after 12 days in the kidnapper's den. The national secretary of the Youth Council, Biodun Aderounmu, confirmed his release on Saturday. Olajuni was abducted on Monday, February 17, 2025, on his way to Abuja for a meeting. The kidnappers had demanded 100 million naira and 2 tricycles as ransom for his release. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, had ordered the deployment of the intelligence response team to secure the safe release of the Afenifere youth leader after a video went viral where Olajuni, who was at gunpoint, pleaded for Nigerians to come to his aid and raise funds for his release. Away from that, a magistrate court in Lokoja, Kogi State has granted the demand of the prosecution in the cyber stalking and criminal defamation case against a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, Austin Okai, to enable the Department of State Services, DSS, to conclude their investigations into the allegations. The decision of the DSS to seek for the remand in prison custody was to ensure compliance with the law by not keeping the accused beyond 48 hours in custody without the lawful permission of the court, in line with the criminal justice system of Nigeria. Okai is facing trial for his allegation on the social media that the Kogi State Governor, Usman Ododo, allegedly stole billions of naira meant for the local government councils in the state, as well as some agencies under the state government. In a related development, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Oduaghan has urged Unoma Akpabio, wife of Senate President Godswill Akpabio, to stay out of the allegations of sexual harassment and intimidation against her husband. The dispute has escalated after Akpoti-Oduaghan accused Akpabio of blocking her motions and intimidating her following her refusal of his alleged advances. Mrs. Akpabio has dismissed the claim, stating that both families have maintained a cordial relationship for years. In a letter dated March 1st, 2025, Akpoti-Oduaghan has insisted that the allegations are personal to Akpabio and that he should defend himself. She has also claimed to have concrete evidence supporting her accusations. Nigerians may soon face severe fuel scarcity as long queues return to filling stations across major cities. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria has issued a 7-day ultimatum to the government, now demanding urgent action on fuel supply issues or risk a nationwide shutdown of distribution. News Central Bettina Nweli reports.
Fuel shortages are hitting Lagos and other parts of Nigeria, with tanker drivers halting fuel loading over alleged harassment by government officials. In a strongly worded statement, Ipman blamed the crisis on supply disruptions, rising transportation costs, and alleged hoarding by private depot owners.
If you have issues as regards the truck operation, we believe should be informed, and necessary time should be given to us. If there is any vehicle that's idle or whatever, necessary hours should be given for it to clear. You see, because we operate under strenuous environment, meaning that sometimes you come and you be killed, or you can have puncture, you can have, because of the heat, overheating. Naturally, every transport operation has its own issues.
While the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has downplayed the crisis, citing logistical issues and panic buying, Ipman warns that without swift government intervention, a nationwide shutdown is imminent.
Hopefully, by next week, we'll also come back here to be able to, inform the public whether this money has been paid or whether a total amount of money that was supposed to be paid. But marketers vehemently, I want to repeat myself, that marketers vehemently has complained that this money is long overdue.
Many Nigerians remain skeptical as fuel shortages have become a recurring challenge despite the country's status as a major oil producer. Analysts caution that if the situation is not resolved swiftly, it could drive up inflation and cripple businesses already struggling in a tough economic climate. With Ipman's deadline fast approaching, all eyes are on the government and oil marketers to prevent a full-blown crisis. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Bettina Nwili.
Away from that, rights activists in Nigeria say that the nation's civic space is shrinking with journalists facing arrest and detentions and activists disappearing without a trace. At this high-level stakeholder policy dialogue in Abuja, experts review events within the nation's civic space, warning that insecurity is no longer just about violence in communities, but the attitude of government towards free speech, press freedom, and democratic accountability. Our correspondent Edom Joseph has more.
In recent years, rising insecurity has significantly impacted Nigeria's civic space, restricting citizens' abilities to express themselves and hold the government accountable. Activists argue that state-controlled narratives have further limited free speech, making it harder for citizens to express themselves.
Digital rights are also human rights. It is not only when people are harassed, attacked, or are sent out by guns that their rights have been, impacted. Some of the things you will remember is what happens during election. One of our, as a matter of fact, I would say the leading light of investigative journalism in Nigeria, Premium Time, is currently facing a digital attack.
The government will always talk about national security, which is important, because the Constitution made it very explicit that the primary responsibility of any government is to protect lives and what? Properties. If the same life and property that the government is supposed to protect, they are using that as a tool or possibly as maybe like the reason why we are going to be repressing the same people that are protecting the life and properties. So there's a need for a balance.
While national security remains a priority, activists warn that democracy without free civic engagement is at risk of collapse. They call for human-centered security policies, ensuring that protecting lives does not come at the cost of silencing voices.
I'm wondering if we still have a future for our children. I'm going to just encourage us all to seize the opportunity, not just to analyze challenges, but to formulate actionable solutions that reinforce our democratic foundations.
I would say that it requires the convening of multi-stakeholders, diverse stakeholders from different sectors to actually not just have a conversation around the issues, but to explore different strategies through which these issues can be addressed.
Meanwhile, they stress that the situation is even worse at grassroots, where many communities lack platforms to voice their concerns. They urge policymakers to ensure security measures do not stifle civic participation, allowing all citizens a voice in governance. In Abuja for News Central, Edom Joseph.
And that's all the breakfast headlines we can take at this hour. There's more at the top of the hour for 10 a.m. In the meantime, it's more Breakfast Extra here on News Central Television. I am Judith at TV. Stay with us.
It's time for another big story. Let's focus on the escalating political crisis in Rivers State, a situation that has raised concerns about governance, legality, and the welfare of the people, most especially. Now, in a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has reinstated an order halting the disbursement of federal allocations to the state and recognized the Martins Amaole-led faction as the legitimate Rivers State House of Assembly. This ruling has sparked intense debate, with implications for governance, political stability, and public service delivery. Now, to dissect these developments, we have a lineup of key voices from the political and analytical landscape.
Yes, indeed. Joining us now to provide insight into this development is first the Publicity Secretary of the Rivers State APC Caretaker Committee, and that's Mr. Chibike Ikenga. Also joining us is for more in-depth in terms of the economic and governance implication is Ugochukwu Oputa, is a seasoned public affairs analyst and commentator, and also Bola Festus, who is our correspondent live in Rivers State as well. Lady and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Let's start with you, Mr. Ikenga, shall we? What is the APC's official stance on the ruling recognizing the Amaole-led assembly and freezing federal allocation to Rivers State?
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, viewers as well. Firstly, I'd like to correct the fact that I'm no longer the caretaker publicity secretary of the APC. Congress had been conducted by the national leadership of the party, and now they emerged as the substantive publicity secretary of the party in the state.
Duly noted.
That taken, APC as a party in the state, had canvassed elaborately, even on this platform and so many other platforms, on the trajectory by the River State government, particularly with their disobedience to court orders, court rulings, court judgments, and that it had implications, and that at the most auspicious and appropriate time, that the sledgehammer will be hit on the government. And that's that position was part of what culminated in the decision of the Supreme Court, like you have rightly mentioned. So as a party, we know that we believe, like Professor Evidaisi did, talk about rule of law, espoused it with other authors. You also know that Montesquieu did talk about separation of powers. And because the government here in Rivers State refused to abide by those principles of democracy, and then the government also refused to obey its own oaths of office and oaths of allegiance, particularly for the executive arm under Governor Simfubara. These are some of the crises that have led to where we are, and that the position of the Supreme Court will support them in total, and we're happy that rule of law had been restated and reinstated and reiterated in Rivers State. Going forward, we believe that everyone must abide by the law, must obey the Constitution, and then that will also guarantee peace, tranquility, and development as a party. That's my view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ikenga. Now, Biola Festus, Biola, thank you for bringing us that report from during the week. You brought us a report as the matters unfolded and the annulment of the elections and all of that. But your report also focused plenty on the people, which is where I'm very interested in. Could you please take us through that report and tell us how exactly the people of Rivers State are taking these announcements and these happenings and how it's affecting their daily lives?
Okay, one thing that is worthy of note is that Rivers people are a very politically inclined people. When you talk about politics in Rivers State, every man on the street understands it, and they are also actively involved in the politics of the state. Now, when I went to the street on Friday to get what the people are saying, they were not so much concerned about party struggles and party fights, because to them, Rivers State politics is a game of who pays the highest bidder. That's what they say. So they are not concerned about who stays in seat and who does not. But what they were particular about is how it affects them, their daily life, because everything in Rivers State depends on the policy of the state, depends on politicians. Even every businessman would have to have some sort of loyalty to the political class in the state in order to thrive. That is how Rivers State is in terms of politics. So there are cries where they will be affected financially, because we have the civil servants depending on the government for their salaries. So if this federal allocation stops, it will definitely affect them. Yes, the state can operate with internally generated revenues, but how far can it go? Of course, -1 in every finance is a big loss, or can have a very great impact.
Well, and just thinking about the impact of that, right, let me come to Puta and ask you, Mr. Puta, the Supreme Court's ruling to freeze federal allocations to Rivers State is unprecedented. We are reinstalling something that was ruled in the first place, that they were going to get the federal allocation, and now it's been frozen. What is going to be the immediate impact of this on just the social economic issue for Rivers State?
Like you don't unprecedented, with respect to this well-respected justice of the Supreme Court, it's something that I personally am waiting for the certified copy of that judgment. But then again, from where we sit, freezing the what is due to a state because of internal political wrangling, it's an overkill, because a lot depends on that. Hospitals depend on that, doctors depend on that, basic servants. A whole lot is going on, that depends on that federal allocation. And I think we have to ask ourselves, is really the justification morally? Because that's responsible for a large chunk of the revenue this our company gets and distributes across the 36 states of the federation.
Mr. Oputa, my apologies, but it seems we're having some technical difficulties. It might be because you are connected to Bluetooth to your microphone. If you could help us adjust that so we can get the full worth of your submission here this morning. While you're doing that, let me come back to Mr. Ikenga. Mr. Ikenga, there has been a vacuum in the state when it comes to governance with everything that's been happening and how it affects the people. I would like you to please address this vacuum, especially now that this ruling has come out and that and the impact that it might have on the people. How do you think the people of Rivers State will live their lives now with this new ruling?
Okay, thank you. Some of these challenges we had were completely avoidable had the governor and his team listened to wise counsel and refused to pander to the whims and caprices of crisis entrepreneurs. You know, those whose interests were to completely defraud the state through misleading the governor and the executive to taking unconstitutional steps to placate them. So, because the Supreme Court had taken these decisions now and had insisted that rule of law must be followed, due processes must be followed, and that the Constitution must be followed. Of course, you know that that's what guarantees stability in governance. And then when the stability comes, then you talk about accountability as well, because the Rivers State House of Assembly has to checkmate the excesses of the executive by ensuring that the executive plays according to the rules and obeys the laid-down principles upon which separation of powers within the arms of government are guided. So from this point, there will no longer be any dictatorial or any absolute power from any part of the arm of government, particularly the executive. You know, the executive has been very overreaching. You know, the executive has prevented the House of Assembly from performing, had blocked several decisions that will enhance good governance in the state. And now that the Supreme Court has taken these bold steps, the people will have a greater participation in the governance of their own affairs. Mm-hmm. And once that is guaranteed, through the Rivers State House of Assembly under Right Honorable Martin Samebule, things will begin to go as required. But that will also depend, because we do know that the Rivers State government, particularly the executive arm of government, does have a penchant for disobedience to court judgment. So we await their decisions as to how they want to go about these Supreme Court decisions. But we want to plead and ask them to do so, to obey it to the letter as the only panacea to ensuring that there is peace, to ensuring that the people get what they deserve, their yearnings and aspirations are addressed properly and in an unaccountable manner, so that everyone in the state will be happy about development of the state.
Mr. Ikenga, I think you just captured two very important things that I was thinking. One is the application of this court ruling by both parties, and then the other one is reconciliation, because whether you look at this way or that, it affects the people of River State. How do you think it will go onward?
Okay, thank you. I think that in APC's, our press release immediately after the court judgment, we called on the governor to see this as a way forward, to try to see that he obeys the decisions of the Supreme Court as a way to bring in the entire state together, because integration here in the state is most important. You know, having sidelined the Rivers State House of Assembly under Right Honorable Martin Samebule, and now they have been reinstated by the Supreme Court, it is important that as a governor who heads the executive, he needs to midwife a meeting of the leadership of the state. He needs to midwife a meeting of the leadership of the government in the state to ensure that everyone is on board, because all of us in Rivers State, we're all part of the state. No, the state does not belong to one or two persons. So the governor has to take decisions in the larger interest of the people. And as governor, he must take those tough decisions that ordinarily he would not love to take. But because of the interest of the state, he has to do that. And we implore him to so do, if actually is interested in bringing everyone together and avert divisions.
Let's see if Mr. Puta, as your audio been thinking, you just if you can go at my last question at you regarding the Supreme Court's ruling freezing the federal allocation to Rivers State.
Yes, like I said that its impact on the state is enormous and can spell catastrophic if not holistically looked at. Yes, we know, also understand onus of this struggle. The governor elected by the people of Rivers State sit down to ensure that the rule of law is being followed. There have been arguments that the section of the Constitution that has to the pension and the vacation of the governor have said that on the 11th of December 2023, these lawmakers, by their own evolution view, effected all progressive they announced their defection on the House and defected. It's an automatic process. And the governor has said that upon this defection, it seems to be members of the House. This argument is still there. It's pending on at the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt. It's also it's something that is yet to be judicially addressed. Of course, we know that the eminent justices in their own wisdom has adjourned. Did not capture issue of defection. Did these members, did they defect or not? Are you saying that their defection does not amount to them losing their seats? So while Mr. Ikenga is also saying yes, the members of the House are trying to enforce the Constitution and the rule of law, the governor, as the chief secretary of the state that was elected by the large majority of Rivers State, down to ensure that the right thing on. Well, on the issue of allocation, no problem. Remember that part of the benefit in democracy, the current president a legal battle with the federal government. He ran the Lagos State for a very long time without the state federal allocation. It is moments like this that leaders are expected to challenge the system and ensure that democracy, the House of Assembly members, the Federal House of Assembly members have their case, the Supreme Court have given judgment, that's fine. It's also duty bound that this other case to a logical conclusion so that our democracy can at the end of the day benefit. There have been precedents in this case. The case of Cross River State is here to refer to. So it's important that because in the eyes of the judgment from Justice Omotosho was instituted before their defection. And so when you go by that, they are not considering defection as at the point of court. But then also know that the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt is also pursuing a case on defection. And when that is exhausted, they are now truly say the fact have been exhausted. But for now, the reality is that instruction have been given to the CBN to withhold allocation to Rivers State. And is expected to abide by it. The governor is yet to make any public statement, but we're expected that by Monday, in the coming days, the governor will formally address the state and maybe the guideline as things follow. But I know that the governor is someone that is that has shown to abide by the and protect and well-being of Rivers people, and also in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic. And going forward, we're going to see the trajectory this will take. But as regards the implication on Rivers people, it is so stark. We should consider that first, medical emergency, fire service, civil servants, all these things depend on this fund. But I'm definitely sure that it is situations like this that requires us to even be more committed and our strong will and strong resolve to push and far as much as we can in terms of democracy to Rivers people. And the people of Rivers State are not disturbed. That processes like this are bound to happen. But at the end of the day, I feel like the end is not too far again.
Mr. Oputa, that's Ugochukwu Oputa. I want to say thank you, and also to you, Biola Festus. You brought us that report. Your Vox Pop did see where, indigents and residents of Rivers State, a particular man said the Supreme Court is clearly not he said, and I'm going to paraphrase him here, that the Supreme Court is clearly not the last hope of the common man. That's how he put it. Festus, Biola, many thanks for doing that. And also to you, Mr. Chibike Ikenga, as well, for taking out the time to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That's pretty much all we can take. I wish we had enough time. Hopefully, when the state government puts out a statement, we'll have both camps join us to go in depth into the discussion. Let's go on a short break. When we return, there's more. Stay here. And it's time for us to shine a spotlight or light on remarkable people and causes making a difference in our society. And that means it's time for Extra Special. And today we mark World Waste Pickers Day, a day dedicated to recognizing the vital role of waste pickers in environmental sustainability and waste management. From sorting recyclables to reducing landfill overflow, waste pickers contribute immensely to the circular economy, yet they often work under difficult conditions with little recognition. So today, we aim to highlight their contributions, the challenges they face, and how we can support them.
So joining us for this conversation is Esther Fagbo. I know it sounds familiar. She's a sustainability leader and environmentalist who has been actively advocating for waste management reform and inclusive policies for waste pickers. You are welcome. Thank you very much for gracing Breakfast Extra, Ms. You got me tongue-tied.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I'd like to know, let's define who waste pickers are in the context of Nigeria.
Okay, so in the context of Nigeria, waste pickers are like the people that you see on the street who carry bags. Sometimes they can be Malams, but there are other tribes that are there as well, and then they pick waste. Not all kind of waste, but valuable waste, recyclable waste, metals, plastic, carton. You see them on the streets, they pick it and then they put it in a bag. They're always with a bag. Sometimes they might look not very good, not like you and I, but they just go from street to street, house to house, and then pick waste from the street.
Now you said valuable waste.
Oh yes, valuable
Once
waste.
again, how valuable can a tin can or a rubber plastic PET bottle, or how valuable are these? Have I missed the culling?
Maybe. So when, for instance, recycling started years ago in Nigeria, there was not so much value. People would get these recyclables and get gift items. But today, plastic, for instance, is sold at about 500, 600 naira per kilogram. And the can is like, sometimes you can get canned for almost 1,000 naira per kilogram.
It's rubbish gold.
Yes, rubbish gold. So they make a living out of it, and then over the course of my work, I have seen that a lot of waste pickers can have like the kind of life that you and I have in terms of having a good family, sending their children to school, buying a house, building a house. I know of a woman, Daniel, that I told a story in my documentary where she had picked waste, gotten money from the waste, and then with this money, she's building a house. And this is somebody that doesn't even have a shop in Lagos.
Right. But there's stigmas that come with it, aren't there? And let's talk about the stigmatization of the waste pickers. They play a crucial role in recycling and recyclables, right? But there's also a stigma that comes with that. Back in the day, we used to call them Kongis. It was, if you know, you know. Kongis was what we called them, right? And they would be right in the landfill, and they'd wear clothes with their raffia bags, picking the trash. And now it's now metamorphosed to Ebola, right? And even though they're still trying to get some sort of shine, it's stigmatized. Why is that, and how can you destigmatize it?
So the reason why, that's part of the reason why we're advocating for them and always speaking their truth. the reason why it's stigmatized is because people see them as, you know, these people are not doing the work that every other person is doing. And Nigeria as a country, sometimes we don't really have respect for labor and the work that people do. So there is that. And then people have tagged them as thieves, as armed robbers. I mean, there was a recent ban in Abuja recently because the government found out that, you know, people are disguising as waste speakers to perform like things that are not right, like stealing and vandalizing the city. So they are being stigmatized. They're not recognized for the job that they do. They're very important in the recycling value chain because at the bottom of that pyramid, they are there. And if they don't collect that waste, especially for a society like Nigeria where we are not exactly where we're supposed to be in terms of waste management, like sorting our waste from source. For instance, do you sort your waste at home?
I do.
I just dump it there.
So
everything.
I do.
Banana peels go with plastic and all.
Good. I do because the estate has provided means for us to be able to do that, so we do that, right? So I do. When my plastic bottles are piled up somewhere because there's a spot to go recycle it. So I really do. Yeah, I do.
Go recycle it?
Yeah,
so you
there's
get money
spots
from it.
around. No, you don't get money, Ray, but there's spots around the estates where you can do that. But I have to also ask, right? You said they're at the bottom of the food chain, and so that means that because they're at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the blue collar sector, right? Yeah. When it comes to, because they're there, it means that there's not really so much as regulation and bodies that cover them, right? And I remember an event when I was talking to one of the officials who works with Last Mile, or I can't remember, and he was saying that that he can count, he was lost count of times where there are cadavers, that they would, stumble on cadavers at landfills, and he was saying that there are times where, they have to find a way to protect the persons who work under them, the speakers as well. So let's talk about the challenges that the speakers face and how regulation is important for such an informal sector that is crucial to recyclable.
Very good question.
Yeah, so the challenges that they face really is a lot, like health challenges. You see them working without personal protective equipment, and that exposes them to different health challenges. I mean, if somebody is going to your bin to pick up things without hand gloves and then they're just working, there's health challenges, there's the stigmatization, there is unfair wages because, there is nobody that is exactly covering them so that they get real value for the waste that they collect. But I would say that in terms of regulation and policy, like every other thing, policy and regulation would take time. The government would also take time to look at the sector. Loma, for instance, is in charge of waste management in Lagos, and for instance, I've had a conversation, and even in the documentary, the Loma MD had said that we're not even supposed to be calling them waste speakers, we're supposed to be calling them urban miners, because what they are doing is helping to save the environment. And he doesn't even say waste speakers. If he's here now, he will say urban miners. So because seeing that they are having that conversation, and even having like the essay to the governor on circular economy, having conversation around how we need to now formalize them and make their work more seen, you would know that there are backings, but with every other regulation, there has to be like processes that would take place. So there's registration going on for them with Loma, for instance, in Lagos State.
Registration?
Yes, there's a registration that...
So it's beginning to get formalized?
Yes, it's beginning...
Because I was going to ask how involved is the Lagos State government in these pickers and the recycling process?
Oh,
urban miners.
These urban miners.
There we go.
How involved is the Lagos State with these urban miners?
Oh, so Lagos State is really very involved. I mean, with waste management, I would give it to Lagos State because they have all the agencies that are working to ensure that, there is formalization. They support these people as well. So for instance, they support in their programs, in their activities. When we have like programs to support waste speakers, we go to like Olusosun to give like free health checkup to waste speakers, for instance, you know, if you don't have the backing of
urban miners,
right? If you don't have the backing of the government, you're not able to do that. And I have seen for sure, like, the continuity of government, even in this sector, because when the MDs are changed, you see that
continuity is always an issue for us.
It's always an issue, but in this sector, I think that they're doing very well in terms of continuity because it keeps growing.
Judith, I wanted to mention something. First of all, you are so passionate about this, and it's very obvious. Just wanted to put that out there. Secondly, let me tell you both a story. I sat down at the beach once, and I met this young man, pretty much the same age, and he bought me a drink, and even bought me supper that evening. And we sat down, we talked. He had this very glorious, luxurious watch on and a very beautiful, luxurious car outside. And when I went on to ask him what he did for a living, he said, well, he picks waste. Well, he didn't put it exactly like that, but it became
into waste management.
He's into waste management, urban mining, and all that. But he had a Mercedes outside. So it made me curious. Now, he told me exactly how he plugs into this hierarchy or into this value chain that you spoke of. What is this value chain, and how high up does this value chain get? How rich can I get?
How rich? I mean, before you answer the question,
let's go there.
Before you answer the question, if you were driving by road doing the Lagos-Ibadan Express, if you're going to Shagamu-Ibadan or Ekperuremo, and you're going through the Lagos-Ibadan, there was a spot just outside on the outskirts of Lagos that read, S business is...
Oh, big business.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
they were,
So waste business is also big business because I can't still, I know the brand, I know the color of the card, everything. If I see him go past, I say, there he is. But how high up does this value get?
Yes, I would say that it's very high. I mean, when I said I wanted to study environmental management and go into waste management, people thought that I was crazy. They felt like, there's not going to be any job for you. My friends were like, you're going to come out and do wole. I don't know if you know wole, people that goes about to, I don't know how to say in English. Sorry. So it was like there was no job. But now I'm having a living out of this, in this sector.
I know, I saw your car outside.
Yes. So with that, you can tell that there is, something. Even for, I'm speaking now to people that are corporates that want to build a career in this sector. Now, in terms of the value chain, so there is the urban miners at the bottom of the pyramid picking the recyclables, and they sell to aggregators, and some of these aggregators can go from small to very large aggregators.
Where do they sell these to aggregators? The aggregators actually, they have a meeting place.
So there are so many aggregators in Lagos.
I know a place
State.
in Mushin. A very big place in Mushin.
Yes, there are so many places. If in Bega here, there are so many places. In everywhere in Lagos, all local governments in Lagos, you would always find an aggregator. That the sector has grown that big.
So they collect.
Yes,
compress.
so they collect. So when they collect, different things happens. For some aggregators, most aggregators right now in Nigeria, when they collect, they bale the material, they remove the cap and the labels. The material that has the highest value now being can and plastic.
Okay.
So for the plastic, the cap and the label, just remove that, and then they compress the material using a baling machine. That material is being now sold to off-takers. So for instance, the company where I work, we have also now started exporting that material and then getting foreign exchange for the material that we're selling. So that's how big it can go. There is also going up the value chain to begin to convert the materials to pellets. And this can now be used to make cotton clothing, other plastic. You hear of some organizations that would say, oh, we have moved from, we have achieved 50% recycled plastic. So in their product, so if they say, oh, we're using 50% recycled plastic in our product, that means 50% of the plastic that you would buy as bottled water or as a drink is from recycled plastic. So it's from the plastic that you had used previously that has now gone through that process of recycling, and then is now being recycled.
This recyclable is, and by recyclable I mean the circular economy. It's fast growing. I mean, I won't say fast growing, but it is growing and it's gaining some sort of recognition. And so that turned in. Let's talk about technology and synergy between the private and public sector, right? do you think that in Nigeria we have been able to adopt technology into the circular economy and even a synergy between the private and public sector, given that we have the FMCG companies that are here, all of the products that we see being, carried and, in our restaurants? Have we found a system that works? And if not, what can we do to get there on a global standard, to get a global standard?
Well, in terms of circular economy, I would say that circular economy is, I have done trainings in circular economy in 2021 for government officials, private sectors, and NGO. At the time, it was just coming. Now is a buzzword. And as with every buzzword, everybody wants to say circular economy. So circular economy really is just moving from the linear economy where it's just take, make, and use and dump to now the circular recycle. Where the products, you think about reusing the product, you think about how, that product can be recycled and then reused for something. That's when you say circular. And in terms of Nigeria, honestly, we're not there yet. Because of my experience, I went to a circular building in Germany that is circular. Was this in Germany or Netherlands? Sorry.
Wait, hang on a second. Germany, you don't even know where it has taken you to. So this is how big this industry is.
So you're just looking for where it's going to transition into. You're just looking for... Wait.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to talk about the circular building that I had seen.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in this building, the electricity, the water that is being used, everything
solar powered.
Yes, solar powered. The water is recycled water. So if you go to the toilet, if you flush the toilet, the wastewater that goes, is purified and then being used again. So there is that process. There is the ventilation of the building. There are plants and all of that in the building that helps to keep that building ventilated. But in Nigeria, and then there are also like things that you can use, you can use and reuse, and then all of those processes you can see. In Nigeria, we're coming up, and we're going to get there, honestly, because we're building that momentum, and then you can see everybody pushing for it and driving that focus. We are going to get there, but we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. And the FMCGs they're not there yet then, in terms of, like, at least even the plastics, not even to go about the energy production.
So in terms of plastic, I don't, with the FMCG, some of them are supporting, like, ensuring that, I don't want to mention names, so some of the FMCGs are really supportive, and you will see them supporting recycling initiatives, supporting organizations to do all of this. Like I mentioned, some of them will say, oh, we have achieved plastic neutrality. Some of them will say, oh, we have, we're using 50% recycled material. That's like the power that they are pushing, the push that they have for that material and how, but some of them, in recycling, for instance, the clear and the blue bottles have more value in the market. Why don't we have most of our drinks and all the others that are
these kinds of packages?
In this kind of packages.
Very interesting.
So,
when you
thinking about that in terms of the
Mrs. Esther Frank Fagbo, I want to say that you love doing this not because it takes you places or makes you money, but
she loves it because she cares about the planet.
Exactly.
Yes.
And let's say we appreciate this about you, and thank you very much for making Breakfast Extra actually a platform that you come to expose us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I must say that for those who are at home, you can watch a cane. A cane is a very good, a cane is on Netflix. On the downside, they have achieved a circular economy, and it's brilliant. Go see it. But no, not for underage children, like for teenage and above.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And do stay tuned. We've got more coming inside of Breakfast Extra.
Good morning and welcome to Sports Update on Breakfast Extra. I'm Favor Itua. We'll begin with stories where Kenyan and Ethiopian runners dominated the 2025 ECOWAS Abuja International Marathon half marathon, while Nigerians excelled in the 5-kilometer race. Harrison Muchira Wanjiru of Kenya triumphed in the men's half marathon, finishing in 1 hour 04.39 minutes, with fellow Kenyan Adam Suleiman Mohammed securing second place. Ethiopian runner Lydia Natiyaka Walama led the women's race, crossing the finish line in 1 hour 15.3 minutes, followed by Abresa Mintsewo, Nigerian athletes shown in the 5-kilometer race, claiming most of the prizes for ECOWAS citizens. Over 5,000 runners participated, competing for a total prize pool of $71,000. The marathon celebrated ECOWAS at 50 featured Africa's most lucrative half-marathon prize of $10,000 for each top finisher. Interesting times ahead in the world of athletics and, of course, the ECOWAS region. We'll now move on to our next story, where Dakar, Senegal will make history in 2026 as the first African city to host an Olympic sporting event, the Youth Olympic Games. Scheduled from October 31st, the Games will bring together 2,700 young athletes from around the world for 2 weeks of competition across Dakar, Diamniadio, and Sali, with the motto, Africa Welcomes, Dakar Celebrates. The event aims to inspire youth across the continent and serve as a model for future YOG hosts. The game will feature 25 sports in competition and an engagement program promoting 10 additional sports. With 151 events, including full gender equality across all disciplines, Dakar 2026 promises to be a landmark event in Olympic history and African sports development. Away from there now to football, Nathan Tella played a key role in Bayer Leverkusen's commanding 4-1 victory over Eintracht Frankfurt, helping his side close the gap on Bundesliga leaders Bayern Munich to 8 points. Tella's early contribution set the tone, delivering a precise assist for Nodi Mukele's goal before Patrick Schick extended the lead moments later. Frankfurt responded through Hugo Ekitike, capitalizing on a defensive error, but Leverkusen remained dominant. The victory strengthens Xabi Alonso's title ambitions ahead of a crucial Champions League showdown against Bayern Munich, while Frankfurt's struggles persist after another disappointing defeat. Interesting time ahead for the Super Eagles player. We wait to see if he will be part of the list in the month of March. Still talking football, Atletico Madrid secured a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Athletic Club, extending their winning streak in head-to-head clashes and temporarily moving to the top of La Liga. The match between third and fourth place took on added significance after Real Madrid's loss to Real Betis. Both sides created early chances, with Jan Oblak denying Inaki Williams and Athletic's defense blocking multiple attempts. The breakthrough came in the second half when Marcos Llorente's precise pass found Julian Alvarez, who finished clinically just 7 minutes after coming on. Athletic pressed for an equalizer, hitting the woodwork multiple times, but Atletico held firm to extend their unbeaten run to 10 games and, of course, Athletic's 6-match streak across all competitions. Away from football now to tennis, Thomas Machar secured his first ATP title with a dominant 7-6, 6-2 victory over Alejandro Davidovich Fokina in Mexico Open final. The 24-year-old Czech, who entered the tournament ranked 25th, is now set to break into the top 20 when the new rankings are released. Machar displayed exceptional serving, winning 37 of 39 first points and saving a set point in the tie-break with a powerful serve. Controlling rallies with his forehand, he claimed his second career win over Davidovich. He becomes the second Czech to win in Acapulco, following Yuri Novak in 1998. Meanwhile, Davidovich finished as a runner-up for the second consecutive tournament after a recent loss in Delray Beach. All right, congratulations to him. And now to the world of basketball, where Minnesota Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards has been fined $35,000 by the NBA for failing to leave the court and throwing the ball into the stands after his ejection against the Los Angeles Lakers. This marks his sixth fine of the season, bringing the total penalties to $320,000. Now, Edwards received 2 technical fouls in the game, leading to an automatic 1-game suspension, which he served during Minnesota's loss to Utah Jazz. Now, his season total of 16 technical fouls triggered increased suspensions for every 2 additional infractions. The Timberwolves have urged him to control his emotions as the team fights for playoff and positioning, but his repeated outbursts continue to impact both his playing time and his team's performance. All right, interesting times ahead for Timberwolves player Anthony Edwards. We'll wait to see how much of this he will take, of course, with these suspensions. And that wraps it up on Sports Update on Breakfast Extra. And Favor Itua will go on a quick break. Breakfast Extra continues.
Where's your
It's time for breakfast headlines here on Breakfast Extra. The abducted national president of the Afenifere Youth Council, Eniola Ojajuni, has been released after 12 days in the kidnappers' den. The national secretary of the Youth Council, Biodun Aderounmu, confirmed his release on Saturday. Olajuni was abducted on Monday, February 17, 2025, on his way to Abuja on a meeting. The kidnappers had demanded 100 million naira and 2 tricycles as ransom for his release. The Inspector General of Police, Kaide Egbetokun, had ordered the deployment of the intelligence response team to secure the safe release of the Afenifere youth leader after a video went viral where Olajuni, who was at gunpoint, pleaded for Nigerians to come to his aid and raise funds for his release. Away from that, a magistrate court in Lokoja, Kogi State has granted the demand of the prosecution in the state cyber-stalking and criminal defamation case against a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, Austin Okai, to enable the Department of State Services, DSS, to conclude their investigations into the allegations. The decision of the DSS to seek for the remand in prison custody was to ensure compliance with the law by not keeping the accused beyond 48 hours in custody without the lawful permission of the court, in line with the criminal justice system of Nigeria. Okai is facing trial for his allegation on the social media that the Kogi State Governor, Usman Ododo, allegedly stole billions of naira meant for the local government councils in the state, as well as some agencies under the state government. In a related development, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Oduaghan has urged Unoma Akpabio, the wife of Senate President Godswill Akpabio, to stay out of the allegations of sexual harassment and intimidation against her husband. The dispute has escalated after Akpoti-Oduaghan accused Akpabio of blocking her motions and intimidating her following a refusal of his alleged advances. Mrs. Akpabio has dismissed the claim, stating that both families have maintained a cordial relationship for years. In a letter dated March 1, 2025, Akpoti-Oduaghan has insisted that the allegations are personal to Akpabio and that he should defend himself. She has also claimed to have concrete evidence supporting her accusations. Meanwhile, the Center for Youth Participation Advocacy Africa has called for the incorporation of youth not just in Nigeria but across the African continent for their voices to be heard in governance. At a press conference in Jos Plateau State, CIPA Africa says a good number of youth have a lot to offer in governance, but constant relegation of this critical group has continued to have its adverse effect in the polity. News Central Chizoba Anyowe reports that CIPA Africa, who says it is working towards ensuring innovative ways of mentoring the younger generation while reiterating the essence of youth empowerment and capacity building, among others.
This report into the public space with all of the impacts that we have been able to make in the course of 2024, and also projecting the directions we would like to go in 2025. Elections at the local government have been truncated for a very long time. So it's a shining light that we have returned to routine elections, hopefully, at the local government level, which is closer to the people.
So there's mentorship being streamed in. There's also helping them to shape their own lives for the better, so that the future will be brighter for them than what it is now.
We are committed to our mission and committed to innovating the way we are doing, carrying out our objective, and will continue to do our part in making sure that the voice of the young people are heard.
President Bola Tinubu has paid tribute to the late founding president of the Republic of Namibia, Sam Nujoma, describing him as a warrior who galvanized Nigeria and other African nations to fight for his country's freedom. Nujoma was a revered figure who led his country to gain independence, steering the nation on the path towards democracy and stability. Speaking on Saturday during a state burial for the late Namibian leader held at Heroes Ector in Windhoek, Namibia, President Tinubu, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, said that the late leader's demise is not an exit from space and time, but the wake of his immortality, in the minds of Africans. In Central Africa, the M23 rebel group has handed over 20 fighters from the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, including a general and senior officers, to the Rwandan army at the DR Congo-Rwanda border in North Kivu. The FDLR, founded by former Rwandan Hutu leaders involved in the 1994 Tutsi genocide, has been active in eastern DR Congo for decades. Rwanda has justified its military presence in the region by citing the FDLR's by citing the FDLR's activities as security threat. The M23, which has launched offensives in North Kivu, has continued to engage in clashes with Congolese forces. The handover marks a significant development in the ongoing conflict as regional tensions remain high over the presence of armed groups in eastern DR Congo. And that's all we can take for now on our Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Breakfast Extra here on News Central Television. I'm Judith, the TV. Stay with us.
Welcome back after the news. Still the last hour here for Breakfast Extra. Let's turn our attention to a critical health crisis, a public health one at that. Now, the menace of counterfeit drugs. The Director General of NAFDAC, Nigeria's drug regulatory agency, recently made headlines by calling for the death penalty for individuals involved in the production and sale of fake and counterfeit medicines. Now, this strong stance comes amid reports that her life and that of some NAFDAC staff are being threatened due to their relentless crackdown on fake drugs. Now, with thousands of lives lost each year due to substandard and falsified medications, the debate over harsher penalties for offenders has intensified. Should drug counterfeiting be considered as serious as violent crimes like murder? Would a death penalty be an effective deterrent?
And so to help us unpack this, we're joined by two guests. Our very first is Dr. Philip Njemanzi. He's the chairman of the International Institute of Advanced Research and Training, Chidi Khan Medical Center. And he joins us live. Also joining us is Sambom Iyange. She's a legal practitioner. She will help us to understand the legal and human rights implications of this proposed penalty. Lady and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you, Dr. Njemanzi, shall we? Fake and counterfeit drugs pose a major health risk, but often leading to treatment failures as well, drug resistance, and even death. From your perspective as a healthcare professional as yourself, why does a case of fake and counterfeit drug still persist in Nigeria?
Yes, actually, when you look at the problem, and you have to look at it holistically, while we have the NAFDAC, and I must say here that they are doing tremendous work, very, very good work and important work. You look at it from the point of view of the legal framework protecting people from fake drugs. And this is grossly inadequate. And when you look at the whole holistic problem, you'll see it from the point of view that even though they try to control the inflow of drugs, how does this drug legally get dispensed to the end user, the patient? There is no legal framework for this. It's almost like free for all a market, whereby there is no profession that should be strictly medical that has the prescription right. The prescription right is that somebody has to say that this drug is appropriate and I'm prescribing it for this purpose in this patient under these conditions. So since we do not have a comprehensive prescription rights law, that makes it very, very difficult to control who is in charge of this. Is it the drug dispenser, the peddler, the pharmacist, or the doctor? Who is really in charge? Quite frankly, nobody is in charge. Once you do not have a comprehensive prescription rights law. So that's one thing that needs to be done. And when we think about this, we must think about it holistically. why are we still importing a lot of drugs? And this is where the fake drugs come in. Because it is profitable for the people to just bring in these drugs, even though they are fake, and sell them. But if we had a functional and real supported pharmaceutical industry, that means, what I mean by this is that you provide at least a 200 billion naira loan in our budget for health bank, in which the people who are in drug manufacturing can borrow money at single digit interest loan. So let's say for example, 5%. And they borrow, let's say 10 billion or 20 billion to produce a certain drug. And this drug is being produced in Nigeria. The quality is being checked by NAFDAC, and it is brought into the market. It will be very difficult for people to go to India or China or anywhere else to forge these drugs and bring them in, because they are already at a very reasonable cost, and their profit margins will be almost non-existent. So you have to take a comprehensive approach.
Now, I see what you're saying. They produce them here in Nigeria, give people jobs, and also check the standards. But then again, that's also perhaps could result into, well, there's certain areas that if left unchecked could result into a bigger problem. Now, that's me as I'm not a health professional, you are. So I'll take your word for it. However, now let's look at the claims of death threats by the DG of the NAFDAC and also some NAFDAC operators there. They said that their lives have been threatened because of the crackdown that they are undertaking to make sure that we get proper drugs. Now, she's also called for the death penalty for violators, people who peddle these fake drugs or people who even manufacture them or even import them into the country. We had a conversation on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, where you noted that perhaps maybe it is not the best idea to put a death penalty to this. Do you want to take us through that? You have plenty of time now to explain why the death penalty might not be the best way to go in this case.
Yes, first of all, I must say that NAFDAC is doing wonderful work, and I commend the President Director and his staff and her staff on what they are doing. And we commend this. They are doing very brave work, and they need support of the Nigerian people and the Nigerian government and the whole law enforcement structure in this country to accomplish their task. We need to protect these staff of NAFDAC in every way possible. However, would it mean that if we impose death sentence on drug peddlers and we will not have a stricter enforcement? That is very doubtful, because we have done that before. We have done that with kidnapping. Well, what has happened now? Not only has the ransom increased tremendously, they now kill, even after the ransom is paid, they now kill their victims. Now, we did that with armed robbery. It only got deadlier. And, you know, people were even talking about rape and all that, imposing the death sentence. They were now burning all their victims. So really, the experience in this death sentence issues does not really suggest in any way that will make the crime less. No, most times it makes it even more deadly. So I think the problem here is that once the person who is peddling the drug is looking for money, looking for profits where he doesn't deserve one, by deception. So what you have to do is to use the market forces, as I said before. If you make it unprofitable for people to bring in fake drugs, it will not be an encouraging trend. You see, people only peddle drugs like fentanyl, tramadol, and all that because there are people buying them. Now, but if you were to institute treatment facilities, look at it. In this state now, there are barely 1 or 2 treatment facilities for drug users. There is virtually no education on the dangers of use of illicit drugs. So really, we are not doing the structural needful things that we need to do to make sure we discourage the practice. We are strictly taking a law enforcement approach, which, well, regrettably doesn't work very well.
And so then what then should now be the alternative? Is it financial punishment, longer prison sentence, financial penalties? what there should there be? Because the crackdowns didn't just start now. It started as far back as the 90s with Dora, the former DG, Dora Koili, who doubled down on crackdowns on counterfeit drugs and fake drugs. Should it be longer prison terms? Should it be life sentence in jail? Should it be financial penalties?
Yeah, I think the NAFDAC director, when I heard her comments, was very correct in saying there are so many ridiculous sentences that are there. 250,000 fine and 2 to 3 years imprisonment.
Right.
They has no place. She's absolutely right. Those sentences should be much more severe. But I wouldn't be one of those who will subscribe to death sentences as a panacea for dealing with dangerous crimes. No, I think we should take a different approach in that regard. We can impose 10-year sentences, 14-year sentences, depending on the severity and the implication of what has been committed. However, the death sentence should be a rare event which we impose in our legal structure, not just for drugs, but even for every other thing. It should be an extraordinarily rare punishment to impose, if at all. The reason for doing this is that when somebody thinks, I'm going to be all my life in prison, I mean, without it, it's even more punishing that he's going to die in 5 minutes. So that's just the psychology of it. So, and once we look at this from that perspective of imposing even long-term jail sentences, and then of course confiscating all their properties and all that, that is far more effective than the death sentence.
I would say that their efforts to, for the proliferation of counterfeit drugs, it has doubled in over time. It's doubled down. We understand that our legal practitioner, Sobram Iyanga, she joins us now. Hi, and good morning to you, ma'am. Good morning. We're still having issues with your audio. Good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning.
There we go. Fantastic. The doctor is of the opinion that a death sentence is very harsh. You are a legal practitioner here, so let's take this from a legal, lens. Is this fair when you think about the human? Does this hinder on your human rights privileges for death sentence? Because the argument is that the persons who proliferate counterfeit drugs are committing mass murder. Your take?
Yes, my take on that. Thank you very much. Under the Nigerian legal system, the death penalty is still legal under the criminal code and the penal code for certain crimes such as murder, armed robbery, terrorism. Now the question remains whether counterfeit drugs can be equated with mass murder. Well, to the best of my knowledge and my understanding, counterfeit drugs indeed, they cause mass harm to the healthcare system and leading to loss of lives, and on a large scale, especially when we are dealing with life-saving medication. However, to apply the death sentence, it will have to go through the requirements of the law, and it will have to be through very strict legal reviews. And our current laws do not provide for the death penalty for peddling in counterfeit drugs. So while there may be mass murders, and while the death penalty may sound, while it may sound as an effective way, our laws do not provide for it. And then we look at it in the international context as well. On the international stage, where the use of the death penalty is heavily scrutinized, and many countries have abolished the use of the death penalty. We have international instruments like the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which Nigeria is a signatory to, that permits the use of the death penalty.
We're having issues with her connectivity there. Our legal practitioner just giving us a bit of insight on the call for brain fart. Mazino.
It's okay, I'll help you out there.
Brain fart.
Let's turn to Dr. Njemanze back again. Now, Doctor, we can be our own saviors if we put in a little bit of our own effort. How can community effort help? What do we need to do as a people who are actually the consumers of these fake drugs in the end? What must we do, or how can the community help? community participation, let's put it so?
Yes, I think we need a little more activism in terms of education. The NAFDAC has a structure of reporting, and I think that has to be strengthened. So the community should serve as the ears and eyes of NAFDAC. So people should have direct access to NAFDAC by making their reports in a very confidential and protected way. And I think the structure which NAFDAC has put in place has to be made aware to the people so they will know actually what NAFDAC can actually be duly informed about what is happening in the community. The other aspect of it is that you have to educate the community, because the community has gotten used to the fact that if they are sick of malaria or whatever they think it is, even if it's not malaria, they just go out to the chemist and pick up some drug. There is no structure of going, there is this culture that is not really there, that you have to go to the doctor, get a prescription, and then before you go to the pharmacy. So we really have to re-educate the Nigerian populace and tell them this is the proper thing to do, not because you're going to give money to the doctor, but to make sure that the drug you're taking is appropriate for the disease that you want to get cured of. So there has to be a re-education of the Nigerian populace to empower them so that they know the right structure and the right application of drugs. So I think in all, one can also say that we have a very big ungoverned space as far as drug administration is concerned. NAFDAC is only controlling the medication, which is only about maybe in 30% application of use in the country. So you have 70% who are using traditional drugs. They use all manner of herbs that are bottled, whether they are fake or anything. Who does that? Who will control that aspect of? Because that kills far more people, causes far more complications than that. So as I said, the legislature, the Nigerian National Assembly has to take a comprehensive look. So that if you allow a large ungoverned space, like not having a control for the herbal drugs and traditional drugs, you are actually moving people. When you start imposing a strict control of the medication, you are just moving them over, because they will still get sick. So they will just move over to the ungoverned space. So that is why you must take a comprehensive approach. So as you are creating for medications NAFDAC, you are also creating another structure to handle the traditional medicine, which is equally as effective. And you have to have a national pharmacopoeia so people will really know what is in the traditional drug and what does it do. So this is not something you just do by legislation and passing that sentence and it will all things will be taken care of.
All right. I mean, Doctor, earlier you're talking about how we can provide you can provide single digit.
So you have to.
All right, I was saying that earlier you were talking about how businesses, or should I say financial institutions, can provide single-digit loans to manufacturers, medical manufacturers, to be able to create manufacture drugs in Nigeria, giving the inflation and the economic downturn that we find ourselves the cost of living crisis. I want you to speak on that, because you are not just a medical doctor, you're also in the pharmaceutical end in terms of laboratory and the rest. And so I think you kind of get a clear understanding of what is it like and what's the red taping, or should I say the hoops that one has to jump to even get a loan from these financial institutions. Dr. Njemanzi.
The private practitioners, yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
We didn't hear you.
The private practitioners, the private practitioners in this country, under the aegis of the Association of Private Medical Practitioners of Nigeria, has been advocating this for almost 30 years. In fact, as a member of this organization and a member served in several committees of this organization and chairman of Imo State for some time, we have advocated that, look, you need a health bank, just like you have agricultural bank. You need a health bank, where if you don't want to give grants, which you should, you should have a single-digit interest loan for establishment of hospitals, establishment of the pharmaceutical industries, and the establishment of any health facility that gives social health services. So once you have that, then maybe up to 200 billion is issued every year in terms of loan. You are going to see excellent pharmaceutical companies spring up in this country, manufacturing standardized drugs, which people will now take and get well. So we don't have to depend on America or China or India or elsewhere. So we get these drugs, they make it and tablet it in this country, and they will be sold for much less because there will be no need for any importations and all the tariffs that has to go with importation of things. Now, we have the raw materials here. So we can now also buttress the indigenous use of raw materials from all our enormous reserve of raw materials in this country as natural compounds. So I think the thing has to be done in a very fundamental. The government of President Bola Tinubu can take this initiative and say, okay, wait a minute. Let us bring out the first 200 billion, which we are going to give to the health sector and establish a health bank. Go there, borrow money, and then do the improvement. And we make sure we are watching you because you're just in this country. NAFDAC will have a direct access to approve this stuff and make sure that all the things are standardized. And so I think if we take this approach, we might not, the days of big drugs in this country will be numbered.
Dr. Njimanze, you have been sublime. I want to say thank you for taking out the time to join us today to just give a bit of insight on all of this. And your insightful opinions have been pretty much appreciated. And also to our legal practitioner, Sombo Miyanga, who unfortunately have had connectivity issues. We want to say thank you as well. Let's go on a short break, shall we? Hopefully by then my brain would, recirculate back.
There's nothing wrong with your brain. You're okay.
And we'll talk about the price of everything, Nigeria's inflation crisis, and also maybe the price of washing this brain of mine after the break.
Here we go. Welcome. How excited we are. It's our final segment for the weekend, and it's a very interesting one. Let's tackle a crisis that is hitting home across the country. The rising cost of everything, from food to fuel, electricity to essential services. Nigerians are struggling under the weight of skyrocketing prices. A recent report by SBM Intelligence highlights shocking inflation rates, with items like curry increasing by a staggering 177%, sanitary pads by 143%, and even staple foods like noodles and rice seeing price jumps of over 80%. But what is driving this inflation, and what can be done about it?
Stanley Ikechukwu, who's the head of operations at SBM Intelligence, he joins us now to help us make sense of this cost of living crisis we have all found ourselves.
Yeah, it sounds like a good movie, The Price of Everything. Yeah. Except that it's hurting our pockets.
Oh, yes, indeed. How will they survive, the people of this occupants in this small town, as they deal with the rising cost of living crisis? Grab your copy. Nah. Sorry, APC.
Back to regular programming.
I mean, your report paints a bleak picture of inflation in Nigeria. In spite of the rebasing, of the stats, of our economy, it has now reduced the inflation somewhat around below, 10 points or 10 points thereabout. But it's still the same. So what are the factors? What are the contributing factors that are seeing to this hike? And is a rebasing sort of affected with this study?
Okay, so we should first understand that the inflation issue in Nigeria is very complex. The rebasing that happened and somehow minus 10% drop from the original, inflation rates, but there are no effects to that in the everyday lives of Nigerians. Right. So that is one on the other side. But most of the effects, most of the problems affecting inflation are around. First of all, you look at supply chain. Around agriculture, there's been flooding, and when there's this kind of flooding, harvests are usually low. So there will be low supply chain, there will be low agricultural supply in the market. You also would agree with me that there was a removal of fuel subsidy, which affected the distribution and logistics of goods and services from, from state to state and all of those things. So those things actually have effect on inflation. We also look at the monetary policy part of it, where CBN has been adjusting the MPR from time to time, on how people can borrow. That also has its own effects, but that alone cannot curb inflation. There are also security challenges around, our major parts that produces food, that's the Northwest and the North Central. The insecurity situation there has been lingering for a very long time. Until we're able to put all of these things together and fix them, I don't think we'd really see the real effects of changes in inflation on the everyday lives of Nigerians.
It's very strange. No matter how much they rebase, or food isn't coming down, maybe noodles might come down and that will be announced and they were like, yay! But that's all that ever happens. Before you know it, it goes back up. Now, that's not the main thing. Now, regarding food itself, is there the possibility that in the nearest future it'll come down, as against the Nigerian balance where anything that goes up in Nigeria never comes back down? Will it happen at all?
Well, we're actually very hopeful, and we're
I don't want hope. I need facts.
I don't think there's I can't give you a concrete evidence to say that food prices are going to come down with the way this administration has been managing the situation. We've been less productive as a nation. Food input has been on a low. Gradually, it's falling below. The transportation effect is also there for subsidy. Even though we've seen a reduction in fuel price to about 850 naira per litre, which is actually a good thing, but we're not seeing the changes in cost of transportation.
Okay, let me ask that question again. Compared to other years, how bad is it, the current inflation we're witnessing when it comes to food? How bad?
Okay, so food inflation is like the major cause of general inflation in Nigeria. So if you look at, say, in the last 25 years of this uninterrupted democratic dispensation, we would say that under this administration, we've seen the highest of it to about 34.80% inflationary rate.
Coming from, and we're measuring with what year, perhaps, maybe?
So even if we look back, let's go back to, say, 1999, when Obasanjo took office. The inflation rate then was around 6%, rather, And let's also look at 2007 when Obasanjo left office. The inflation rate there was about 5.39%, and the 2 years of the Yar'Adua's administration saw inflation move up to about 12.54%. After Yar'Adua, let's look at the Jonathan administration that brought down inflation to about 8.05%, which is, an improvement. And in 2014,
that's no good. Stop. I'm joking.
I mean, when we handed over, or rather, when the Buhari's administration took office, and I must say it's been the most, the most ineffective government, if you have to compare. And when he was leaving office, as of May of 2023, the inflation rate was around 22.61% or thereabout. By the end of 2023, it moved up to about 24.66%. Then if you look at this administration, the price of things have steadily been going up. Inflation has been increasing from time to time till we saw the highest in the last 26 years of about 34.8%.
So what did Jonathan do right? I'm sorry, Judith.
Go ahead.
What did Jonathan do right then?
So a lot of factors come into play here. We look at external factor. Under the Jonathan administration, there was high crude sales. The production was also high, and crude prices were high. So there was a lot of effects coming into the country. So with that effects, the CBN was able to regulate, the whole FX issue in Nigeria, and that also stabilized the economy to a large point. Jonathan's administration also put the right people in place. That's very important. This administration has done more of it's my turn, and you just put everybody who has helped you win election without even knowing how to run a government. It's like a payback. Thank you for your contribution in me becoming president and all of those things. But the Jonathan administration focused more on capacity. We had the likes of Dr. Ngozi Iweala, and they fixed the economy and put the right things in place. There was also a lot of savings. and cost of governance was not as high as it is now. So all of these factors, if we look at it, it is missing in this current administration. Until we begin to put the right things in place, cut down cost of governance, look at how some of those policies are working. If they are not effective, let's scrap it. Let's look for something that works, rather than stand on the same policies that are not working, and you tell Nigerians to tighten their seatbelts, whereas government officials are living large.
Let's talk about something that's also very important, and that's the depreciation of the Naira. Can we tie the cost of living crisis to the depreciation of the Naira? Did it affect it in any way?
Of course, it did affect the cost of living, because when you devalue the Naira, it loses value. Now, before, okay, let's go back to the Buhari's administration. Even though it was bad, it was not as terrible as this administration when it comes to cost of everything. Under Buhari's administration, you could still buy a bag of rice for around 34,000, 35,000. But under this administration, a bag of rice, as of December last year, sold for about 90,000 Naira. When you hold the Naira does not even have strong value to be able to buy things. Imagine that the minimum wage is around 70,000 and a bag of 50 kg rice is 90,000. Tell me how the salaries will take you home. Nigerians spend more than, in fact, all of their money on feeding. But there's still the cost of transportation there. There's cost of health to put in place. There's cost of rent. There's school fees. And there are other ancillaries there that you need to spend. But these monies are not coming in because what we earn is not enough. So when you devalue the Naira in a country that is not productive, there's a problem. If we were productive, like China, year on year, they devalue their money because China is a production house. Right. So there's a lot of goods in China that needs to be sold. So with time, China does the devaluation so that people can bring in more money to buy more goods for them.
And we're a consumption country and not a producing country.
We're not producing, so it's a major problem.
Besides the depreciation of the Naira, floating of the Naira, what other external factors do you think contributed to the cost of living crisis? Is insecurity part of it as well?
Insecurity has always been a big player in cost of living globally, not just in Nigeria. When your country is insecure, foreign investments will not come in because people are scared. Yeah. How do I invest and get the right yields out of my investment when Boko Haram, headsmen, banditry, IPOB issue, kidnapping and all of those things are scaring people away. It will also not allow for local investors to expand their businesses. That's why we see a lot of concentration in Lagos. And again, because Lagos has, the seaports, it gives you direct access to raw material, direct access to imports, machineries and all of those things, direct access to exports. If we want to see a change, we need to really unchain the economic situation in Nigeria, like open up the Eastern Economic Corridor. What Lagos is doing, Calabar can do it. Calabar is a coastal state. It can do that. But rather, this government has decided to build a coastal road from Lagos to Calabar when Lagos to Calabar is already connected by water. So why are you building a road? When you should be expanding what's the capacity of Calabar by building other inner roads to lead to the north. Port Harcourt is also there. You can do the same thing that Lagos is doing. Warri is also there. You can do the same thing that Lagos is doing. So if we open up these key economic corridors, we would see gradual improvements in everyday lives of Nigeria because there will be expansion of businesses. People will begin to look at other states and see how they can begin to develop those things. Every
day and twice on Sunday, I will always contribute. I always say I contribute or I volunteer the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway as tribute. Anything that's going on and they say they need a tribute to the gods of Lagos, the Lagos traffic.
The mummy water. A very interesting thing that you've just highlighted here about the misplaced priorities in Nigeria. I want to ask a very interesting question. Now, we started seeing this Naira scarcity and Naira devaluation and everything, especially when there was, before the elections of 2023. There was also the instance where the Naira was sucked out of circulation. And it seems that is when everything started to go awry. How much of an effect did that instance, or does that instance have on the situation of things now? And I'm specifically referring to when there was this call for the change of the anatomy of the naira, which we still use the old one now. Did that affect things, or does that affect things from back then right now?
Yes, it actually affected negatively. But before we go in that direction, let's look at the ways and means under the Buhari's administration. The CBN borrowed, or loaned the federal government in the tune of almost 22 trillion naira. There was so much money pumped into the economy without production. So when there's so much money in circulation, simple economics, cost of things to go up. It's just like people have so much money, but there are just few bags of rice to be bought. So whoever is selling would sell to the highest bidder. Exactly. So that ripple effect is what we're facing. Again, the CBN has been trying everything possible to mop up some of this cash by, pushing the, what's it called? By pushing...
if I was an economic expert, cash. I will help you, but I can't.
Okay, sorry, but I mean cash, to reduce cash in circulation, so that people can make use of other mediums like digital currency transfers and all of those things. But it's not working because the POS operation on its own, which is supposed to service last mile, is now doing the job of the bank.
It's now being milked in itself.
Yeah, it's actually it's doing the job of the bank, carrying out large transactions and rerouting money not to the bank but to themselves. So most of this cash are not going into the bank because you go to the filling station rather than take their cash to the banks.
So wherein if it went to the bank, it would have served what purpose?
It would have served the purpose of cashless economy.
Would it have served to also perhaps maybe be reinvested and build the country's income in some way or the other?
Well, it then depends on what the policymakers really want to achieve. It's one thing to come out there and say, oh, we have this map, we have this plan, rolled out, but they're doing the opposite of it. So the effect will be dependent on if they truly wants to make things change. And I tell you for free, anybody Nigeria is not difficult to fix. Let's leave all these jargons they keep saying, oh, tribal issue, insecurity and all of those things. If we're very honest with ourselves, we'll get Nigeria working if we really want it to work.
So back to my question about that instance where they were mopping up the naira. How did it affect our current situation?
Well, it didn't really make a lot of difference, because the problems are still there. Even the mop-up of the naira, it wasn't very significant because there's still so much money, so much naira in circulation.
Would it have been effective if it was done properly, is my question.
Yeah.
Was it the CBN's way of saying, let's take it back in some of this money that we've pumped out there?
Yeah, so if you take back the money, it means that, people can do digital transfer. The government can track every payment, and which is what the government is actually trying to do with the naira policy, track every transaction so that they know where to throw in taxes and all of those things, which would help, grow the earnings of the country.
Back to tax reforms, that meeting from last week.
Yeah. Stanley, there are persons with a crab in the bucket mentality who believe that Nigeria should only focus on its politics and geopolitics should not be on the lips of the average Nigerian. But my argument to them is that geopolitics play a very huge role in our economy, whether it's socioeconomic, socio-political issues, and most importantly, the price of the food that you pay. To support this argument of mine, does geopolitics play in the cost of living crisis that we're facing today?
Yeah, geopolitics is like the father of politics. So you cannot take away geopolitics from politics. So the cost of living issue, if we would expand locally, regional politics, and put the right infrastructures, like I said, if you have Calabar running, the Calabar port running, along the Calabar road, that's through Ogoja, going into Benue State, going into Nasarawa, it is easy for you to do business. It is cheaper at the same time because the cost to move goods from Lagos to, say, Maiduguri will take you about 27 hours. But when you're going to move it from Calabar to Maiduguri, that time is reduced. And we understand that when time is reduced, cost is also reduced. The final price of those goods would also be reduced. So geopolitics plays a very big role in stabilizing the economy.
And we haven't done a fantastic job in doing that on this side of it. And Or even we don't even know the importance of it. Stanley.
We don't know the importance of it.
We don't know the importance of it. Stanley, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Incredible analysis there, and learning a lot from you. Maybe I might come take your job at SBM.
On our next episode of the cost of living crisis, by this time we'll have another. I wanted to do the voiceover
the whole voiceover at the end of the movie.
No, the one that they do for Avatar, where he does the intro, where the commentator on the radio does the intro for Korra the Avatar.
This is what you see.
Yeah, this is my. I like that.
Arcane Avatar, we got your library.
If I've done book now, it will come at Fico. I don't know what
It's been a very interesting 2 hours here on Breakfast Extra for this weekend. I want to say thank you to all the guests and also the viewers that we have. But don't forget, we come back again on your TV sets next week, Saturday, bright and early, 8 o'clock. Before we go, let me just say, Zelensky is my new hero in khaki regalia and combat wear. Slap a Z on his chest. I love that man. You did well. You stood up to 2 of the biggest bullies in the world, and you're still standing. You have my backing.
Now remember that the conversation doesn't end here. We're passing the baton on to the duel for Breakfast Central tomorrow. Benga and Olive will be live with you on standby. Until then, it's good night and a goodbye from us. I'll be here for 12 noon, but until then, we'll see you on Saturday at 8:30.